A king who had 6 wives, 2 were beheaded, 1 died in childbirth, 2 were divorced, and 1 survived. Yeah, you are right. I'm talking about King Henry VIII. To everyone, King Henry was a fat, angry, mad king with 6 marriages. But he had some winning qualities you might not know about. So today, we will go inside Henry's court into his personal life to find out some facts you have never heard before. Before I start, if you are new to the channel or love history very much, definitely subscribe the Histo Facts Show and press the bell icon. Thank you. Henry VIII of England, famous for his 6 wives and drastic religious reforms, also had a brutal reputation for executing friends and family members who he believed betrayed him or got in the way of his goals. Thomas More was a respected statesman, writer, and a close friend of Henry VIII. More served as Lord Chancellor, one of the most powerful positions in England. However, when Henry wanted to divorce his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, More, a devout Catholic, refused to support it because it went against the church's teaching. This disagreement led to More's arrest and eventual execution by beheading in 1535. Henry had once deeply admired him, but his refusal to accept Henry's new religious authority turned them from friends to enemies. But not only his closest friend, his second wife, Anne Boleyn, executes her too, and he even created the Church of England to marry her. She gave birth to Elizabeth, the future Elizabeth I, but failed to provide Henry with a male heir, which frustrated him. After only 3 years of marriage, Henry accused Anne of adultery, incest, and treason, charges many historians believe were false. She was arrested, tried, and executed by beheading in 1536. This was a shocking event, as she was once the woman Henry turned the entire kingdom upside down to marry. The next one is Thomas Cromwell, Henry's trusted advisor. Thomas Cromwell was one of Henry's most loyal advisors, helping him create the Church of England and dissolve monasteries, which brought wealth and power to the crown. However, Cromwell arranged a marriage between Henry and Anne of Cleves, which Henry immediately regretted. Henry blamed Cromwell for the failed marriage, and political enemies turned Henry against him. In 1540, Henry ordered Cromwell's arrest and execution. This was particularly cruel since Cromwell had been so instrumental in Henry's success. The next one, Margaret Pole, a noble woman and relative. Margaret Pole was one of the last members of the powerful Plantagenet family, who were rivals to the Tudor throne. Although she was an older woman, Henry viewed her as a threat. Her son, Reginald Pole, was a Catholic cardinal who openly opposed Henry's religious reforms, which caused Henry to consider Margaret disloyal by association. In 1541, she was arrested and executed in a particularly brutal manner, even though she was in her late 60s. Her execution is remembered as one of the most shocking and unjust killings of Henry's reign. And the last one, Catherine Howard, Henry's 5th wife. Catherine Howard was young, charming, and caught Henry's eye after the execution of his 4th wife. She became his 5th wife, but had a scandalous past of relationships before she married Henry. When rumors of her past and even present affairs surfaced, Henry felt betrayed and humiliated. He had her arrested, tried, and executed for treason in 1542. Catherine was only about 20 years old when she was beheaded, marking another tragic end to a queen who once had Henry's heart. Henry VIII is famous for having 6 wives, but his relationships were even more complex than just these 6 marriages. Henry VIII had several mistresses during his marriages, especially in his younger years. Having mistresses was somewhat normal for kings at the time, as they often sought additional companionship and even had children outside their official marriages. Some of Henry's most well-known mistresses included Elizabeth Blount, who bore him an illegitimate son named Henry Fitzroy. Though not recognized as a wife, this woman has significant influence in the court. Before his official marriages, Henry was engaged or betrothed to other women. For example, Henry was initially supposed to marry Catherine of Aragon's sister, before ending up with Catherine herself. Arrangements were common to straighten political alliances, but not all of them led to actual marriages. Henry's interest in women outside his marriages meant he had unofficial relationships. Although they weren't recognized marriages, these women were often given some status at court. This non-official side of Henry's life meant that his love life involved more people than his 6 official wives. Henry VIII created a lot of laws. Most are unusual. Some of the laws are beard tax. Henry VIII loved beards and even had one himself, but he decided to make money from them by introducing a beard tax. The idea was that men who wanted to keep a beard had to pay a fee, and the amount varied based on their social status. So the wealthier you are, the more you had to pay to keep your beard. Henry believed that a person's clothes should match their social class. He passed laws saying that only certain people could wear certain colors, fabrics, or even types of hats. For example, the only royalty could wear purple, as it was an expensive color to make. This was called sumptuary law, and it was meant to control the appearance of the people and keep the classes separate. Henry VIII didn't want everyone interpreting the Bible in their own way, which could challenge his authority as king and the head of the Church of England. So he made it illegal for women to read the Bible in English. Only noblemen and certain priests were allowed to read it. This rule was meant to control religious beliefs and prevent any challenges to his power. Henry VIII also made a law that required people to wear hats on Sundays and holidays. This rule was partly about boosting England's wool trade, which was important for the economy at that time. Wearing wool hats helped support local businesses and showed loyalty to English industry. Very weird, right? I know. Henry VIII had a very rich and heavy diet, and he loved eating meat. During his reign in the 16th century, he ate a lot of different types of meat, often several times a day. Some of his favorite meats were beef, lamb, pork, and venison, which come from deer. His meals would typically include large portions of roasted meat, which were served with rich sauces. He also ate game birds like swans, pheasants, and partridges, along with smaller animals like rabbits and wild boar. Because meat was seen as a symbol of wealth and power, Henry often had extravagant feasts where meat was the star of the meal. This feast could last for hours, and Henry would eat so much that he sometimes had trouble moving around afterward. King Henry VIII of England believed that the leg wounds he suffered were cursed, and this belief affected his health and mental state in his later years. Around 1536, during a jousting tournament, Henry was injured when his horse fell and he was thrown onto the ground. His leg was severely wounded and it never healed properly. Over time, the injury caused him great pain and became infected. Doctors struggled to treat the wound and Henry's condition worsened. As his health declined, Henry began to feel that the wound was not just a physical injury, but a curse. He thought that the leg wound was a punishment or a sign of divine displeasure. Some people around him also believed that his injury was a punishment for his many actions, including his marriages, his break with the Catholic Church, and his heavy-handed rule. The wound caused him constant pain, and Henry grew more paranoid and depressed as he aged. The infection in his leg also led to serious health problems, including obesity and other complications. He became known for his mood swings and erratic behavior, which some historians believe were partly due to his physical suffering and the psychological impact of believing his leg was cursed. King Henry VIII was buried next to his third wife Jane Seymour in St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle. Jane was the only one of Henry's 6 wives to give him a son, Edward VI, which made her very special to him. Although Henry had many wives, he is said to have loved Jane the most, as she gave him a heir he desperately wanted. After Jane died in 1537, Henry was heartbroken. He had her buried in a tomb at Windsor Castle, and when he died in 1547, he was laid to rest beside her. Their graves are marked with simple, elegant memorials. It's a symbol of how important Jane was to him in life, and it shows how much he valued their connection. Their tombs remain side by side today, and it's a reminder of Henry's complicated life and his deep affection for Jane Seymour, his true love. Henry enjoyed watching executions, especially when they were people he saw as his enemies. He didn't just order executions quietly, he liked to watch them as a show of power. Henry VIII's interest in executions was partly due to his belief that they served as a way to show justice. If someone broke the law or betrayed him, they would be punished severely. For example, he had 2 of his wives, Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard, executed, and he watched their beheadings. He thought that these executions would scare others into obeying him. The executions were often done publicly in places like the Tower of London, so people could see the punishment. In some ways, Henry found these events chilling, and they were also a way for him to demonstrate his authority as king. Watching executions became a part of his rule, showing just how brutal he could be in maintaining his power. Henry VIII, the King of England, had a very complicated relationship with his children. His daughter, Mary I, was first child with his first wife, Catherine of Aragon. Henry wanted a male heir, so he wasn't happy that Mary was a girl. When his marriages to Catherine didn't produce a son, he decided to divorce her and marry Anne Boleyn. After Anne gave birth to Elizabeth, another daughter, Henry's relationship with Mary worsened. He wanted her to accept him as the head of the Church of England and deny the Pope's authority. Mary refused, staying loyal to the Catholic faith. In 1533, when Mary was 17, Henry's advisor began to plan what is sometimes called a kidnapping of Mary. They wanted to force her to accept the new religious changes and make her agree to say that her mother Catherine was never really married to Henry. Mary was locked away and was threatened with violence if she didn't obey. She was later taken to the Tower of London, where she was kept in isolation for some time, though she was never physically harmed. Mary was eventually released, but she never fully reconciled with her father. She later became Queen of England, and her reign was known for her attempts to restore Catholicism in response to the way Henry had treated her and her mother. He has another unique habit. He wrote letters to himself. This was part of his private way of thinking and reflecting on his actions, decisions, and his reign. He often wrote down his thoughts about important matters like politics, religion, and his personal life. These letters weren't meant for anyone else to read. They were for him alone. It's believed that he wanted to understand himself better and keep track of his goals and frustrations. The letters were also a way for Henry to communicate with himself when he was making tough decisions, such as dealing with his marriages or matters of the state. Writing to himself helped him organize his thoughts and work through difficult situations. Some historians think Henry may have written these letters during times when he was feeling lonely or isolated. Despite being a powerful king, he had many struggles, including dealing with betrayals, losing friends, and facing pressure from his court. Henry had a deep fear of being poisoned. This fear came from a mix of his experience and the dangerous world he lived in. Poisoning was a common way for people to try and get rid of their enemies or rivals, so Henry became very paranoid about it. One of the reasons for his fear might have been the sudden death of his friends and advisors. Henry lost several important people during his reign, and some of them died under mysterious circumstances. This made him believe that someone might try to poison him too. He even went so far as to have his food and drink tested for poison before eating. He would have his servants taste his meals first, just in case someone was trying to harm him. Henry also made sure to keep a close eye on the people around him, especially his wives, as he feared one of them might want to get rid of him to marry someone else. Some historians think his fear was also made worse by his declining health in his later years. Henry suffered from obesity, diabetes, and constant pain from his leg injuries, which made him feel vulnerable. As a result, he became more obsessed with the idea of poison and more suspicious of those around him. And the last one, Henry VIII used the claim of divine right to justify marrying multiple times. He believed that, as king, he had been chosen by God to rule and could therefore marry anyone he wished, regardless of religious rules. This belief helped fuel his divorces, executions of wives, and his creation of the Church of England when the Pope refused to annul his marriage to Catherine of Aragon. As I said before, he loved execution. Henry once ordered the execution of a man who had killed a toad during a festival. The man was reportedly an alchemist, and killing the toad was considered to have ruined a magical ritual. Henry believed the man's action had angered supernatural forces, and as a result, the man was executed. It shows how superstition played a significant role in the king's rule. So, don't forget to tell us how you felt. What do you think about the King Henry VIII? I really want to know, and also let me know in the comments what historical royal topic you want to see next. Thanks a lot for watching the full video. See you in the next video. Stay well.